Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is special guest Valerie Rubin. How are you?
I'm good, Bernadette. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on today.
You're welcome. I'm doing great. I'm honored to have you. So, Valerie, where about are you tuning in from?
I'm in Talmadge, Ohio. What about you?
I'm in Calgary, Canada.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
great. One of my best friends is there.
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. So, Valerie, can you tell us more about you and what you do?
Yes, so I am an anxious attachment specialist and trauma informed somatic coach. I help people heal their anxious attachment so they can feel calm, secure within themselves and in their dating life.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Um, when did you begin to do the work that you're doing right now?
I have been on my own healing journey for about 7 years at this point, but I started coaching around 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. And you mentioned trauma as well. What kind of work do you do with your clients to help them heal and release trauma?
Great question. So, trauma is not something we can just think our way out of. Just like with anxiety, we can't just
Mhm,
think ourselves out of an anxious response. We have to help our body to feel safe enough to release the anxiety and
mhm,
release the trauma and really change those aspects of our psyche. So I do that utilizing somatic therapy and hypnotherapy because it's all in the body.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing. For those who don't know, what is somatic therapy? I've heard of hypnotherapy. What are they and why are they important to help heal trauma?
Absolutely. So trauma memories can get stuck and stored in our body, right? Like when
Mhm,
you're anxious, you might start to feel your heart's racing. You might start
mhm,
to notice tension in your muscles. This is all
mhm,
because it's that trauma being activated. So somatic therapy helps us to find the root of what these trauma memories are because our brain will protect us by dissociating, distracting us, tuning out
mhm,
of the trauma because it feels too big. So somatic therapy helps us to feel safe within our emotions, help us feel safe and just increase our emotional capacity. We have these
mhm.
trauma memories that are stored in our body. Somatic therapy helps to process and release these beliefs and memories throughout our body.
I love that. You mentioned something really important, beliefs. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about that from your own perspective?
Absolutely. So we start to acquire these beliefs even at a young age because we have
Mhm,
little t traumas or big T traumas. Little T traumas are, maybe like your dad gives your sister a balloon and not you. And now you start to believe I'm unworthy because you don't understand why he gave her a balloon and not yourself. So with beliefs, what starts to happen is when you have an emotionally unavailable parent, or maybe your parents are just working, or maybe they went through a death in the family, they're not able to attune
mhm.
to you and meet your needs in the same capacity. So, as a child, we're like little mini narcissists because we don't have logical thinking yet. We don't have that online. So, we start to internalize everything and
Mhm,
we don't have access to logic. So, if our parent isn't there for us, we start to believe that there's something wrong with us or we're unlovable, unworthy of love, or not good
mhm,
enough. So, because this belief begins to penetrate your body and now you are going into adulthood with the same belief because it's unhealed if you haven't done healing work, and then you start to attract people who reflect this core belief back to you.
Oof, I feel like you're speaking to the old me. It's true. I'm being honest. I've experienced so much trauma. I'm still disassociating from my body. Yes, I connect with people, but I feel love. I'm able to give it. It's just different from the prior experiences of trauma. I would say mine started very young, very early, because my father wasn't really around much and abusive as well. Um, what would you say to me if I were to be one of your clients and that was the first thing I brought up to you?
I would first acknowledge that happened because a lot of this is another tangent, but a lot of people don't like to be called victims or feel like they're in victim consciousness. But in reality, like these were the circumstances that you were given where you didn't have access to a primary caregiver. That's going to
Mhm,
cause a lot of attachment trauma and a lot of trauma in our bodies because as a child, we don't understand why our dad is acting that way. We don't
mhm,
understand why he left, why he's abusive. So instead, we
mhm,
blame ourselves. So first, I would have you first identify what beliefs have you do you have about yourself, and starting from there, and how do you process your emotions if you are able to do that. A
mhm,
lot of my clients are, we're disconnected from our bodies because that's how we learn to stay safe. And that's why a lot of people start to have anxiety and they go up in their heads because it's too overwhelming to be with our
mhm,
bodies. So that's why when clients first start with me, I start with having a processing emotions meditation that helps to identify what sensations am I noticing, what emotions are present, and how to process through them so that they don't get stuck and stored in our bodies. And this is what can
mhm.
cause a lot of that dissociation, anxiety, muscle tension, because it's all getting stored and stuck there.
It's like being, a computer. It just crashes. It has many
Hmm.
system, many things that it can do, but it can only do so much before I have to plug it in again. And I feel that we
Absolutely.
failed to do that. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, because we have these computer systems, aka our minds, our subconscious, and if
Mhm,
we aren't upgrading them from these prior beliefs, we're going to stay stuck. Our inner child will stay stuck, frozen in this time period. So we're reacting just like the same as when our dad left us. When a partner is distant or a partner isn't responding to our text, our nervous system will react the same way we did as that 4-year-old child when our father left because it's triggering those
mhm,
wounds.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. You mentioned meditation, and there has been so many misconception about meditation. Here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that more and more practitioners, coaches, and people in your line of work, they're putting those together with healing. What has changed in your opinion?
I think what's changed is people are becoming more informed. And I think people with severe trauma or complex PTSD, maybe a long meditation is not going to suit you. So that's why I
Mhm,
like that first one. It's literally almost 9 minutes long. It's very short and it's
mhm,
more working with the body instead of staying up here. And if you're in freeze, if you're shut down, if you're feeling really depressed, feeling like hopeless, sitting
mhm,
down with your thoughts for an hour is going to be the opposite thing that your nervous system wants to do. So
mhm,
even altering that a little bit with a walking meditation will help you mobilize that energy and you're moving and you're more connected with your body, and that's going to stop you from feeling as disconnected and it's going to help you not feel as frozen.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. In your opinion, do you think creativity also helps? I know it helps me.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think creativity is huge because when you're a child and maybe you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder or you've experienced a lot of trauma or you're a parentified child, meaning you had to take care of your siblings at a young
Mhm,
age, you learn that it's not really safe to be a kid and you mature much quicker. And that's where this term of old souls really come in. It's not that you're an
mhm,
old soul, it's because you were forced to mature and basically negate your childhood. You weren't able to be a child. So creativity, connecting back to that, what brought you joy when you were 4? What
mhm,
what brings you joy now? Maybe that's drawing, coloring, painting, even just walking outside and sitting in the grass. Like
mhm.
that's creativity. And for me, every week I will go to Barnes and Noble, which is a bookstore,
Mhm,
and I will take out my mindfulness coloring books and I have like hundreds of colors and markers and I'll just sit there and I have a playlist all on inner child healing. It's just
mhm,
relaxing and gentle music, and to me I find it so calming. I'll listen to that and color, and that really enhances and boosts my creativity, and that's
mhm.
helping you to really stimulate areas of the brain that you weren't using previously.
Yeah, yeah. I paint and I love it. And it's so healing. It's hard for me to describe what it does for me on a mental or spiritual level. It's very, very healing. You mentioned an old soul. I would know what that means because I've been tapping into my psychic gifts and abilities. What does that mean for people who don't know? Maybe they just heard it now.
Hmm. I think it really also applies to if you feel older than people your age. Maybe you're in your teens, 20s, 30s, and maybe you feel much older. It's usually
Mhm.
because you have that programming that you couldn't be a child. It wasn't safe to be a child. You had to mature quickly. But it's really like it's a trauma response to feeling like an old soul necessarily. Like I remember in my teens feeling like I didn't resonate with a lot of the people that I was surrounded with because
Yeah.
it's not that there was anything quote unquote wrong with them. It was just because they were acting their age and I thought they were being immature, but they weren't. They were acting their age. I was
Yeah.
acting outside of my age.
Me too. Exactly the same thing. I still struggle to properly understand most humans, what they do, why they say it, and how they do it. And I'm like, it's like speaking a different language. You're connecting with a soul that's from a different either reality or dimension or different experiences. I'm like, I still love you. I'm gonna love you regardless of what you do, but I don't understand you.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard to understand and it's completely different. They say the quote of people who are raised in survival are going to be very different
yeah.
if you're raised on love. It's a completely different reality and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned inner child. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before. Mine is part Chucky, and I'm learning, but she is on fire. She's angry. I'm building trust in a relationship that was never there. What would you say to people like me who at times are terrified to even mention that word, let alone work with the inner child?
Mhm. I think firstly is to build your capacity, right? We can't
Mm,
go from 0 to 100, meaning, we have no relationship with this inner child or we've been used to neglecting them or their needs to then being like, I love this inner child so much. It's first noticing small windows of time. Maybe I connect with my inner child for 30 seconds by giving myself some self touch, or tuning in. What do you need right now? Really,
mhm,
really small things. We're building that capacity. Because at first, what a lot of my clients experience is they might not have that trust with their inner child yet.
yeah,
So it's first asking, what do you need from me to build trust? What do you need to help you? What do you need from me to help you feel safe to
mhm,
connect with you?
mhm,
And inner child work is very important, and because our brain doesn't understand the difference between a real and imagined event, so when you're going back in time and healing this inner child, you're literally healing your brain and those past experiences.
yeah, 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 I agree. And at times I know it's hard to get help. As adults, as wounded adults, I always say I'm one of them and I'm still healing. How can we learn to appreciate the help that's there and use it?
Mhm. I think the first question, like to answer that question, the first thing I would say is work on your belief system.
Mm,
Because if we are maybe we have avoidant tendencies, or we've learned, or we've had emotionally neglectful parents, we learned that actually asking for help, our brain associates that with pain. So it can
mhm,
feel very hard to even ask for help because we fear that we're going to be rejected or people won't be available. So I would say first work on that, the belief that you can't ask for help and
yeah,
maybe doing it in small ways. Maybe someone that you've talked to recently, you think that they would be open to it. Maybe just
mhm,
ask for help even when you feel like you want to self-isolate.
mhm.
Doing it in small ways, and as you do that with safe people, you will build your capacity and learn that it's okay and safe to ask for help.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you mentioned safe too. I'm picking up on all the amazing words you're bringing because we do need to feel safe, don't we? And those we're asking for help because it feels like we're at war. at least in my case, like I'm at war with my mind, with my body, with my inner child. And I had to build faith and safety and trust.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why you can't just think or talk your way out of it. You have to feel through it. You have to get
Mm-hmm.
into the body, and that's really where that somatic therapy piece comes in,
Mm-hmm.
because that's just you just have to do that in order to work through that tug of war that our brain wants to do in order
Yeah.
to keep us safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that word soma,
Mhm.
somatic. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
really cool. Yeah. Let's talk about the anxious attachments and relationships. I was saving the best for last.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so with anxious attachment, really how it starts to become formed
Hmm.
is parents couldn't consistently attune to you or attune to your emotional needs, or they had inconsistency in meeting your needs. So then the child becomes hypervigilant, hyper attuned, meaning
Hmm.
you're in the room and you feel that energy shift. You can feel what someone says before they even say it because you're hyper attuning to their needs, and you will please them or please your parent to make sure that they will meet your needs. And this is a survival response that's highly linked with codependency. Codependency in relationships, people who are anxiously attached are very highly codependent because they never learned how to meet their needs on their own or process their emotions because their parents didn't consistently model that. So now they're looking to their partner to help them feel safe because they don't feel that within themselves. Our sense of safety becomes externalized, and this is what caused that deep fear of abandonment, because if they leave, we believe our core needs will not be met. And so their main nervous system state is fight or flight, meaning
Hmm.
we're anxious, we're in that anger and anxiety,
Hmm.
that tug of war.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I I normally shut down the party before it starts,
Mm,
right? Because I can already visualize what's going to happen. This person is going to hurt me. It's going to make me even hurt more. Then I'm going to have to deal with the emotion. So I just block it all and shut the party down. I don't even enjoy it. I don't even want to think about it. And I know I'm not alone. This is just me. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
You are so not alone in that. Instead of like going into that anxious part,
Hmm.
you might have learned, because your parents were neglectful or emotionally unavailable, to just shut it down. The anxious
Hmm.
person will go towards the threat, but someone with an avoidant attachment system, they'll go away from it because it's too
Yeah,
big to
yeah.
sit with. So that's really where it comes down to learning how to slowly build your capacity to be
Hmm.
with yourself, because if we have avoidant tendencies, we'll overwork, we will neglect our needs, we'll avoid that time with ourselves, so we'll
Hmm.
distract. So I'll start with clients, okay, build our capacity. How about we start with being with ourselves for 1 minute, one,
Hmm.
and just see what comes up,
Yeah.
starting with baby steps, building that capacity.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, what would you say to someone who's from an older generation? I assume you work with everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just clarifying, are you asking like older generation who's anxiously attached?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, someone who's older from a different generation than I'm from, than you're from, because they were raised differently and they have different beliefs and ideas.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think with older generations, I think there's a lot more like blame, like a lot more
Mm-hmm.
self blame. And it's like, what's wrong with me? I'm at this age and I don't have XYZ. Or just in general, like they also have that more guilt for even asking for help, because back then emotions were seen as weak. So being able to reframe those beliefs around your emotions in general, because
Hmm.
emotions are just guides. They're showing you messengers of what is and is not in alignment. Your body really holds all the answers. And when we can connect to our body and connect to our emotions and sensations, that's when we will fear abandonment less, because we
Hmm.
will be able to put our needs first. Because if we're so connected with our body will scream to us when something is not in alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you by any chance work with parents who's working
I
with their
do.
kids?
Oh,
Okay.
I don't work with children, but I do work a lot with parents because
Parents.
it all starts with the parent. If you
Mhm,
can emotionally regulate yourself, that will be
mhm,
very helpful. Because a lot of the times people will say when they have children, all their mother wounds, father wounds will come up because now
mhm,
they have this being that's fully dependent on them. And it can be very confronting and triggering. So learning how to regulate and heal through those triggers are huge, are so huge,
mhm,
because literally children will attune to you because they aren't in their brain, they don't have that access to logic, so they
yeah,
are fully dependent on you for regulating their emotions. So if you cannot regulate your emotions, it's going to be that much harder for your
mm,
child to regulate theirs, and then you're just going to be in this cycle of
yeah,
triggering each other.
yeah, I agree. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with me and my audience?
I would say, I would say, I, I, I would say to, sorry, I'm just gonna tune in and think, what is something that
Mhm,
we didn't go over? Um, yeah, one thing. It's called the repetition compulsion. So if
mhm,
you had parents who are emotionally unavailable, you might tell
mhm,
yourself, I'm never gonna be like them. I'm never gonna date someone like my father or my mother.
mhm,
But we have this theory called a repetition compulsion, and our body feels will gravitate towards what's familiar. What's familiar equals safety in our nervous system. Our brain hates uncertainty. It hates change. So it will move us into relationships with people who mirror those familiar dynamics until we shift our attachment system utilizing somatic therapy, because we can't just think our way into feeling safe with healthy partners. We might look for
mhm,
those red flags, or secure and healthy people will come to us and feel boring. And so
true.
we'll write it off because we're used to those highs and lows and roller coasters. That's what's
Mhm,
familiar. So that's really what my work is all about, is helping people to rewire their nervous system so they can find
mhm,
a new safety and feeling healthy, secure love, that being their baseline.
yeah, yeah, thank you for sharing. How can partners help those of us who are healing from trauma in our childhood?
Mm. I think being compassionate, I think having a curiosity mindset, and I would say work on pausing before reacting, making sure that you are communicating your needs, just communicating everything to an
Yeah,
extent, making sure
mm,
that, you know, especially if you have an anxiously attached partner, making sure you're reassuring them. If you go out of town, or if you are busy at work, telling them, hey, Susie, I'm not going to be able to respond to your messages today. I'm doing
mm,
all these presentations at work. I'll respond to you or call you by this time, and keeping your word, because that
mhm,
will help build safety and trust within those individuals who have trauma.
yeah, awesome. So if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
They can do that on, they can find me on Instagram. I have a free meditation to heal abandonment anxiety and a fear of abandonment that's completely free. So my
Mhm.
Instagram is at heal with Val. So HEAL with VAL. So
Oh,
that's where they
that's
can find
awesome.
me.
That's really
And
cool. Yeah. I have well, I have one question. I normally say I have two questions, which I ask about the website and connection, how people can get a hold of you. My last question for you is, what is the meaning of life for you?
ooh, what a delicious question. What is the meaning of life for me? That is such a great question.
Thank you.
I would I would say the meaning of life for me, it really comes down to my core value of freedom. I really, and that's literally what my business name is, Freedom with Valerie LLC, because when we can have freedom to do what we want to do, and when we heal our anxious attachment and we have that freedom to feel safe with being alone, feel safe
Mhm.
in partnership, freedom is what gives us joy. Freedom
Mhm.
is what allows us to live a beautiful life of purpose, because freedom allows us to give us space
Mhm.
between what others think and what our heart's desires are.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all you do and for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Bernadette. It was so lovely.
You're welcome.